So you go from $1,000 to $30 million.
From boardroom shark to fitness empire kingpin.
Andy Lee had it all on paper.
I had a double degree there, got admitted to the bar, and also had visions of working on Wall Street.
But then a single mind-blowing event made him throw away the safe route forever.
Back when Ben and I were training in the gym, we wanted to access the product. It was actually based in America. We couldn't actually get it in Australia. So we reached out to them, see if we could buy it. They said, no, you can't buy it from us. You need to be a wholesaler.
Flat broke and all in. Andy made a bold move. He teamed up with Ben.
We literally set up a bank account in my own name.
Locked in a wholesale account and maxed out their last credit card.
Bought 50 ropes, took one each, sold them to our friends at the gym, and we thought that would be it.
Little did they know, it would transform into something beyond their wildest dreams.
People started asking us, what else can you get?
We bought a bit more stock. We were like a supermarket that only had one thing on the shelf.
The orders kept coming, the sweat never stopped, and by 2013, the WOD life was born.
We bought 2 jump ropes and grew into $1 million business in the first year. We were just sort of throwing caution to the wind and had a entrepreneurial mindset to just go, this will work out.
There are a lot of people who are listening to this podcast who are probably sitting there thinking, how do you develop that mindset?
First and foremost,
take me back to the moment where you thought business was going to be easy and then you had your first oh shit moment, like this is serious and this is a lot harder than what I thought. What moment was that? Like, when did you realize that business wasn't what you thought it was? And then how did you deal with it and work out of it?
all right, straight into it. There's probably not just one moment there. There's been many of those over the journey. Firstly, I'll go back and say that we didn't actually envisage this to be a business. This was a passion project that we started as a sort of a side hustle that grew into now a business, which is a real living, breathing thing. So I think starting off, despite all my better judgment, we didn't have a corporate business plan. We didn't actually incorporate with a company. We literally set up a bank account in my own name from my mate who had worked at a branch, and we just placed one order for a product that we couldn't actually get in Australia. But it never was supposed to be that way. It was supposed to be one jump rope and for myself and my co-founder, Ben, so that we could use it in the gym. They said, you can't actually just buy one. We don't ship to Australia. You're going to need to open up an account. So what went from buying 2 jump ropes went to opening up a wholesale account, buying product from the US. I think it was $1,000, which for us at the time, we didn't envisage that. So we put sort of 500 in each and we went, okay, well, I guess we can sell these to our friends at the gym. And we got them in, took them to the gym. I was in Melbourne at the time. Ben was in Adelaide. We took them to the gym, sold them to our friends. And all of a sudden they said, what else can you get? What else can you get? So we were pretty pumped. We thought that was it. We got ourselves a jump rope. We're happy. We're legends in the gym because our friends now have this as well. And we thought we'll just go on our merry way. We've achieved what we wanted to do. But really all of our friends and people that we trained with said, what else can you get? What else can you get? So we thought, actually, there's something here. And it was never supposed to be a thing. It was a passion project. We bought a bit more stock. We were like a supermarket that only had one thing on the shelf, but we had a full shelf. So it was all faced up, but we only had one of everything. And as soon as one sold, we had to quickly go and buy the second one, the third one, etc. But for that whole year, we didn't track our accounts. We managed it off the back of a bank balance. We didn't think about GST. We never thought that we would actually hit the level to have to register and pay a GST bill. So I'd say over that first year, we actually scaled up quite quickly. We managed to crack $1 million off the back of a credit card in the first year, but we never thought that that was ever going to happen. And at the end of that year, we spoke with an accountant and said, you're actually liable for GST here. We thought all of our money's in product. We've got no money to pay our GST bill. So that was oh shit, what are we going to do here? And we were lucky enough, we got entered into a Shopify Build a Business competition that we thought were an absolute moonshot to win. We ended up winning it. The money that we got by winning that competition paid our GST bill and we lived to fight another day. So crazy going from something that you thought was never going to be a business. It was a passion project on the side doing everything despite your best judgment, understanding what businesses look like and how they're supposed to be set up. But we were just sort of throwing caution to the wind and had a entrepreneurial mindset to just go, this will work out. This will work out. We feel like we're onto something here. And despite we thought was the end of the world, having to pay a huge GST bill because of the sales that we'd amounted over the year, we managed to find our way out of that by winning a competition, which was a bit of a Hail Mary. But I think that's sort of been the journey over the 12 years, is that you don't know the challenges that you're going to come up against. There are going to be oh shit moments, but you just find a way. You find a way every day to overcome those moments and to find a new way to go or a solution. There's always a way to try and work through it. So
how do you create that mindset? Like, there are a lot of entrepreneurs or business owners or even people who are listening to this podcast who are probably sitting there thinking, you know, I want to go do something, and they've always got something in the back of their mind that they want to do, but they're holding themselves back, whether it's going to that next level. I think some people, from my perspective, some people can make $1 million, but they can't make anything more because that next step scares the shit out of them, and they have those roadblocks. Some, it's 100,000 a year. Some people, they just want to start the business, but they just can't take the jump. How did you guys develop that mindset? Or is it just something that because you're mates, you're just like, yeah, fuck it, we'll just go for it? What are your thoughts around that? How do you develop that skill? And then how do you keep scaling, especially as the challenges get bigger, the problems get harder? You know, then you've got, I guess, staffing implications here in Australia as well. It's a hard place to have staff. How do you consistently deal with those challenges, and what's the mindset behind it, and how do you develop that mindset?
Yeah, I think the mindset is very, very important. First and foremost, lucky to have a business partner and a good mate in Ben, who I'm along this journey with. And I think without him, we probably wouldn't have been able to achieve anything near of what we've achieved to date. So I think having someone in your corner that you can bounce ideas off and build confidence with, I think is super important. I think coming from my background in corporate finance and law, there's almost too much rigidity and structure, and you understand everything that needs to happen to run a successful business. And for a lot of people out there, that can be overwhelming. And all of my studies, all of my work experience should have suggested that, no, I shouldn't be doing this because I'm just throwing caution to the wind. But there's always been an entrepreneurial streak in me. I've always, loved how businesses work. I've always loved opportunity as well. I've always been someone that has found a way. If there's something that I want to get access to, whether that's a product, I've always found a way to find it. And that's always been fascinating to me. Even whether it's at school or through university, I always had sort of side hustles. Yes, I had a part-time and a casual job while I was going to university, but I always was interested in the buying and selling and the trading, whether that be, you know, buying old California number plates off the internet and reselling them through forums. Always been fascinated by that. So I think it's having a bit of a balance, and sometimes ignorance is bliss. Sometimes you can get overwhelmed by what can go wrong, but I think it's also important to think about what can go right here as well. And I think that's a barrier for a lot of people. They get held back by this could go wrong. But I challenge people to say to themselves, what can go right? Because we always feel like we need comfort and security. But personally, I always want to challenge that in a sense where I want to discover that next thing. I want to push forward. I want to experience things. And I think having that balance there is really important. But yeah, think of the positives in the situation. As I said, sometimes ignorance is bliss. But I think if there's a way that you can lean into that positivity, that can give you the fuel. And coupled with a bit of passion, you've obviously got to be passionate about what you do, because it's definitely not going to be easy. And when things are hard, if you're not passionate, you can easily throw in the towel, and that's okay. But I think a bit of the positivity around the mindset and having that passion there as well, that can get you started. I always say you don't have to completely quit your job to start this new thing. I didn't. Ben didn't. We were holding down full-time jobs, and this was a night thing. This was before work, after work, in our lunch breaks. And you don't need to have the perfect idea, have it all figured out, perfect business plan, investors. You can start small. and just build and grow and learn. And I think that's the exciting thing. It's to adapt that mindset so that you can take on the challenges, but it's probably more about the journey and the growth and the opportunity rather than what can go wrong. Because if I thought based on everything that could go wrong, I absolutely wouldn't have taken a step. And I've seen sort of both sides. So mindset's super important, but a passion and an interest to learn and grow, I think is super important as well.
How did you go from law and finance? They're like the two most risk-adverse fields to go into starting a business. And I deal with this almost on a daily basis where business owners will reach out and say, look, I need some help. So the business is bottlenecked at whatever level that they're at. And normally at that level, they're time poor and they're money poor. So it's a shit show, right? And they go, I don't have the time to do the things that I need to do in order to grow out of it, but I also don't have the money at the moment to grow out of it. And so they're just choked, and then they don't have the resource because they're bottlenecked with staffing and everything like that. And then they'll say something stupid like, you know what I'm going to do is go run it past my finance guy or my accountant. And I'm like, the accountant is the risk adverse person. They're the one that's stopping you from going to jail.
Absolutely.
They're not the person to ask about entrepreneurial growth.
Exactly. Yes.
Unless they're the accountant with that sort of mindset or that background.
Yeah.
How did you have that mindset, and why were you so different compared to most accountants or most people in law or finance?
Yeah. First and foremost, I'm lucky that my dad instilled in me that sort of path.
Mm-hmm.
I was always fascinated by how business worked, how the world worked, how economies worked. And I sort of lent into that. I was lucky to do well at school, definitely applied myself there. But I was always fascinated by that and felt that that's a really good grounding to be able to do anything in life and to travel, etc. So lucky to have that background and grounding. But like you said, it is very risk adverse. You know, the law, you know, finances, you know, what can go wrong. But I always had a different view. I was always quite commercial. And I remember back in my year 11 and 12 accounting class, my accounting teacher said, it's not about the black and white numbers, it's about the color in between. And that's what always fascinated me. People would always say, well, the number was this, now it's this. But I was always interested in the why behind it. So not to be elitist or anything, but I felt that always put me a step ahead of the people who are very black and white and by the book, because I think finance and law can be very much like that. But I was always interested in the commerciality aspect of it. Okay, that's what the book says, that's what the theory says, but how does this work in the real world? That's what always really got my mind ticking. And I think that's probably what sets myself apart from being willing to go on this journey, because I do have that mindset and that interest and that appetite for that. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting one, because everything points to probably say, look, this is high risk, high reward, I guess. But it's good to have that grounding that you can always fall back on, so that you don't do things that are so materially, incorrect or so risky that's going to put you behind the eight ball. So I think it's knowing enough to be dangerous, knowing a bit of the frameworks, but still having that entrepreneurial commercial mindset that you can utilize that to an advantage rather than a disadvantage.
How do you use that mindset when you're now building a team with staff? I can already tell pretty quickly that based on your background of finance and law, so was it commerce that you studied?
Yeah, I studied law and commerce. Yep. So yeah, I had a double degree there, got admitted to the bar, then also did my chartered accountancy as well, worked at a big four accounting firm for my first real job, suit and tie, and then worked in a large bank as well. Had probably visions of working on Wall Street, either playing professional sport or working on Wall Street. That was the two. I probably wasn't as physically gifted, but I was always interested in finance. And I think having those two skill sets was really powerful. My dad always said, this will set you up. You can go and work in a sporting business. You can go and work for your favorite brand. You can work around the world with these skills. So I always carried that with me. I think that's pretty powerful. So yeah, I mean, it's a great skill to have. And the direction that you can go with that is pretty powerful.
How do you deal with staff? So the company starts growing. And I can tell based on what you've already spoken about, having that background, you're obviously a highly intelligent, smart guy, very fast thinker. Your problem solving skills are probably at an elite level as far as business goes. How do you deal with staff when they probably don't think like you think and they don't have the same ability to problem solve at the speed that you problem solve? The reason why I'm asking this is I have this challenge, and I also know a lot of our community do, whether they're ADHD or on the spectrum. A lot of these entrepreneurial type business owners think super quick and they problem solve really, really well. But you put them around a team and they get over frustrated with them because, it takes a team 5 times longer to do something that they can do, in 10 minutes. It takes a team an hour and a half to do it. How do you deal with that in your business? And how have you dealt with that as you scale? What have you had to learn about yourself? What have you had to learn about others? What have you had to learn about business?
Yeah, look, I think that it's a really good question and not a perfect answer. And I appreciate the applause. I'm always learning. And I think the most I've learned is about myself in that it's never perfect. Everyone's different. Everyone has a different way to look at things. And I think you just learn that over time. I wouldn't say that I have the most patience. I've learned to try and develop that and understand when to have patience, when not to have patience. And I'm trying to continue to build that muscle with people. But similarly, I've been in that boat as well. I've never, I wouldn't say I'm the smartest person in the room. I'm probably maybe the hardest working, but I've never been the smartest. And I've probably been on the other side as well with bosses or super highly intelligent people looking at me saying, why aren't you picking this up? So I probably looked at it from both sides. And look, it's always a challenging one. I think it's about understanding sort of people, and everyone's super different, and not everyone, as I said, looks at things the same way. But trying to understand the direction that they're looking at it from, how they've formed their worldview, and why they have the views that they do, and how that maybe influences their process. One of the things I do look at is like the superpowers of the individual. I think everyone is gifted with a superpower, and that's always different. Someone that's super creative might not be really financially savvy, and that's okay. Don't try and expect them to reconstruct your P&L. Let them focus on the creativity aspect, and then surround them with people that can do that. I've probably been more of a generalist in that I try and be good at everything, and I've never liked specializing in anything. So I've tried to be a generalist, connected in a lot of different areas so I can bring that together with people. Try and get the right people around the table at the right times, I think is important. Try and empower people as much as you can, give them the confidence, because I think quite a lot of the time people don't know what they're actually capable of. And just because they might be the youngest or the least experienced in the room doesn't mean that their opinion's any less valued or valid. So I think it's giving people the airtime and the confidence and the ability to speak up and to communicate. So look, I don't think there's a perfect answer there, and I'm always learning on the people front. But I think it's giving people the opportunity, giving people the tools to succeed as well. And if they don't have that, understanding why and how you can equip them and how you can help them. And then understanding what they're expected to do. Are you expecting from someone something far greater than what they're maybe capable of, or what their experience or skill set would suggest? And are you being too unfair there? And then who can you bring in, or who can you get advice from or reference from to help you with that challenge? So look, yeah, the people side is always challenging, and I find it super fascinating, and I'm always trying to learn and get better on that front.
How do you decide when it's time to let somebody go, when it's time to give them that airtime and that space? And then how do you work through, actually, I've got a bunch of questions just from that part alone, but how do you give people the airtime when you're impatient and you can already see the answers and the outcomes without telling them? How do you give them the power to come up with their own answers, and maybe if it's slightly different versus, auto-correcting them? And then how do you know when it's time to move someone on from your experience in building your company?
Yeah, there's a few ways to look at it. I think that I've had to learn the patience element and understand that, yeah, not everyone is at the same speed that you are, but they've got other superpowers or things that they can bring to the table that maybe I hadn't thought about, or different ways to look at things. So I've learned to take on those views, whether they're right or wrong, and help formulate an opinion. I think that's important. I try, rather than probably tell someone the answer, what I'm trying to continue to learn is to sort of walk them through and help them find the answer, ask open questions rather than, specific questions or as I said, tell them the answer, so that they can learn and sort of find their own way through the maze. And that through that process that they can learn maybe how I'm thinking, I can learn how they think. And I think that that's a lot more powerful if you can sort of teach them how to fish, sort of give them the rod and the bait rather than say, hey, here's a fish, go eat. I think people will learn a lot more. But I also learn a lot about myself and the process and the way that I think through that process as well. So I have to probably give myself a bit more time and space and patience to be able to do that, because in business, you don't often have time. It's one thing you don't have. But I think, constantly learning there, give the right people, if they have the right intentions and you want to set them up to succeed, I think you have to give them every opportunity. And it's not always that easy, but that's how I try and look at it.
And when do you move them on? So what's the process that you and Ben go through when you know that it's time for someone to go, or what are the frameworks that you use? And part of the reason why I ask this question is that what I find is a lot of business owners come to somebody like me and they've got a team that's an absolute mess. It's just, there's carnage everywhere. And part of it is because of past poor communication. There's also the frustration of the business owner that people aren't moving as fast as what they want. Sometimes, depending on the size, there's a lack of process or a lack of frameworks for the staff to use. And one day they just get to work and they fly off the handle, and then everyone gets scared and afraid. Then the next time they know that they flew off the handle, so then they give them too much rope. And then now all of a sudden staff are screwing up things and everything like that. And then one day they just walk in and they just, right, you got to go. And there's a lot of people who are probably listening to this who don't have a framework of thinking through the firing process, whether they are firing someone for the correct reasons, or do you train them, do you develop them? And so I'm just wondering, what's your process and how did you learn that skill, or how did you and Ben, is there a way that you do it, or is it just sort of off feel?
Yeah, look, it's all like everything. It's always learning, experience, time under tension and application of it. And then also that sort of feedback loop of understanding, hey, did we do the right thing there? Did that go the right way? Did it go the wrong way? And then how do we learn from that? I think part of our DNA is that feedback loop and being sort of objective in that and understanding that things don't always go perfectly. One of the big things that we've learned over the journey is that the people that may have been with you day one aren't necessarily the right people to continue to grow with you through the different stages of the business. Mm-hmm. And that's completely okay. We're very, we feel like we have a duty to our team to run a great business, to give them opportunities and career pathways and growth. That's a big part of why we do what we do. But understanding that the person that helped you pack orders in a tiny office 10 years ago, they aren't necessarily the right person to help be the head of operations and logistics at your business. They can be if they're willing to grow and develop, but it's understanding that sort of pathway. And I think you have to step through that with them together. And I think communication is key in all of this, because someone might feel that, hey, that's not the path that I want to go down. This is really what I want to do, and it doesn't quite fit with your vision of me and the business. So I think communication is super important. Having a strong relationship doesn't have to be sort of outside of work, but one where they can sort of trust you and they respect you. I think that's important, so that you can have open and honest communications about that. And then it's trying to understand, well, what are their goals, dreams, and visions, and does that align with the business? And if they don't, having good communication based on your good relationship with them to be able to come to the right result. And of course, there's been times where there's misalignment for us, or maybe the individual felt misaligned with where the business was going, or maybe their role. And I think it's just about talking through that and having a good relationship that you can sort of fall back on so you can have that dialogue, and then realizing that it's not the end of the world. We still have people that worked for us many years ago that we have a great friendship with, but they maybe didn't work out with the business. They've gone on to different things, and that's awesome to see. We sort of celebrate that. Or maybe people leave the business to go work elsewhere where we thought they were great, but maybe they didn't align with that. And it's understanding that every time someone's moved on or a new person comes into the business, that's an opportunity to grow and get better. It's not the end of the world if someone needs to get moved on or someone leaves on their own accord. That's okay. That's an opportunity for us to reflect and then understand where the business needs the help, the resourcing, and how we can get to that sort of next goal. So it's definitely not an easy thing. Do I have all the answers? Absolutely not. There's people on both sides. There's, myself and Ben and the team and the individual. So it's just trying to manage that as best we can as, people at the end of the day, and doing what we can with the facts and the time that we have in front of us.
What happens when you have that staff member that's been with you from the start and there's a role that pops up and it's a management role or something like that, and they go, well, I should have that management role, or, that's definitely my role, but maybe they're not a good manager of people? Or how do you have that conversation? How do you deal with that? And have you had any issues in the past before where someone's felt entitled to a role or felt entitled to a pay rise, and then how do you navigate that conversation? And has that led to any falling outs or any massive challenges, or, what sort of issues have you had with that?
Yeah, I think it's something that businesses always wrestle with, whether that's does time in the seat amount to skill and the ability to execute? Does time in a role amount to management material? And probably the suggestion is that the people with the most time in the seat are the best managers, but they're not necessarily. So I think it's trying to understand the person, the role, and the remit, the expectations, and what are we actually looking for them to do? Do they enjoy doing that? And do they enjoy that sort of management and leadership side? I think, doing is quite a lot different from managing and leading. And that's presented challenges over the time, because being a business and resource constraint, you don't have the ability to bring someone in where they have management experience and they can manage, and that's their job. And maybe there's other people that have been in the business for a long period of time thinking, hey, where am I? Where's my path for growth here as well? So we've had both sides. We've been lucky that a lot of the time there, people that have come up through the business have been sort of successful in overseeing or management or taking on more, which has been great. We've also had the flip side where maybe we've brought someone in from another company who we thought would be management material, and everything looks like on paper they're fantastic. They look like a far better candidate than maybe someone we currently have for these reasons. We bring them in and it doesn't work out. So we've been on both sides there, and it's definitely not a perfect science, but I think it's, again, doing the best you can with what you've got, the information you've got, the people on the team, communication, relationships. These key themes are important to say, hey, look, I know you want this, but we maybe don't feel that you're quite there yet. This is how we maybe see your growth and your opportunity and learning from them and what they want to achieve. Maybe these are the things that we need to help you with to get there. And then if a role does pop up for that, you definitely put your name forward. We definitely try and put people in positions based on merit, not just time in seat. That's super important for us. But on the flip side, if they develop those skills and then find an opportunity elsewhere, we've learnt to be okay with that, because through what we've built and the experiences they've had with us, they're able to go and add value elsewhere. And we try and see that as a positive thing. So look, it's a process. There's always challenges there. Everyone's human. At the end of the day, we want to try and create opportunities. Sometimes opportunities don't come as fast as what people want. But it's also that self-reflection of people. What do you actually want? Do you really want this? Do you only want this because it comes with a higher salary? Are you quite clear on what the role is and where you can deliver the value? So working with people, trying to understand their goals and help the business sort of create those avenues for them.
How do you help them understand their goals? Because it's very logical. Like, I think a lot of the stuff that you're saying is very logical until you put in the human element,
Absolutely,
right? Like,
absolutely.
So then what happens? You go out and you hire this person. So you go out to market and you go, right, we're going to bring in this staff member, and now you've got a staff member that's not performing. You brought them in from the outside and you thought
Yes.
they're going to be a great manager. How do you and Ben handle that? Like, is that one of those like walk into the back office and scream moments, or is it like, what do you do there? And then how do you have that conversation with each other? Then how do you have the conversation with the staff member? Do you realign them with KPIs? How do you try to push performance until you just go, right, this person has to go?
Yeah, it's probably the least favorite thing that we have to do. And we're obviously, trying to build and grow a scaling business, and team element is huge.
Mm-hmm.
So we've definitely had experiences there, and probably comes back to the culture and the team that we've tried to create. And you know pretty quickly whether someone doesn't fit that. It's quite hard to determine on paper, and even just a conversation over a table, through the interview process, how they're going to fit and mold with other people. And that's something that we've learned over the journey and continue to learn, is that it's not just about the one person that you're hiring for that one particular role. They are going to need to fit and operate with the team.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often we'll bring that person in, have one specific example where we brought someone in from a world-renowned business. Everything looked fantastic on paper. We thought this is going to solve all of our problems. And I think as entrepreneurs, we always have that mindset.
Definitely.
If we just get this person in, they can patch up all of these things, look after all of these problems, all of these people, and we'll be able to focus on the business growth, the strategy. Does that happen in practice? Absolutely not. And the person comes in, the original tension is from the connection with the team. The team will tell you pretty quickly whether, hey, this person's awesome. They really fit and vibe with us, slotted in nicely, sort of humble, hardworking, all these sort of DNA traits that we try and have, or they'll tell you otherwise. Some team members may create a certain view of a person quite quickly, and we say, hey, just bear with us, give us time. Sometimes they go, you know what? I maybe didn't think about them the right way initially, and I back you guys, and they're actually worked out really, really well. But then sometimes that person will continue to have that viewpoint across and say, look, I've given it time and really they're no good, or they don't fit, or it's not really working. And we sort of back our team in quite a fair bit because we want to make sure that the team works together. And quite often, even if Ben and I aren't working with them, full days, every day, we can get a sense check on it pretty quickly. And when we realize that, that's the moment where we go, okay, what are we going to do here? It probably will be it will reach boiling point. So you might be a few bubbles there. We go, okay, how important is this problem? Is our business going to fall over if we don't deal with this? We've got a whole list of other things that we're currently dealing with. What's the priority ranking here? Sometimes we deal with it when there's a few bubbles early. Sometimes, it's overflowing, it's at boiling point, and we address it then. How do we address it? I think it's still making sure with the team that, hey, this is the direction that we're going in. We understand your feedback and how you're feeling. We're working on it. Sometimes that can take up far too much of our time, but we want to make sure that the team feels supported and that they feel that they're being listened to. But at the end of the day, we've got to make the right decision for the business. And then where it's maybe it doesn't align with the team and doesn't work for the business, we have to have pretty frank discussions. Like, I've got a good relationship with Ben. We see eye to eye on most things. So we can sort of put together a bit of a plan there about, right person, right seat, style framework that we have. Do they have the ability to do it? Do they want to do it? And do they have the capacity to do it? They get it. The GWC framework is a good one from EOS. And then if they don't tick those boxes, then we need to think, okay, do we have a discussion with this person? Does the role align with where they thought it would be? Where do they see themselves? is it someone that can adapt? Is it someone that can learn? Or do they just have no desire to do that? We always give people a chance. And if they don't want to go down that path, then we sort of need to be pretty open, honest and frank. We've definitely had people that we've maybe allowed to continue down a path longer than maybe what we would have liked or the business would have liked. And that's part of the learning. And we've got so many priorities at once. And you can't patch up everything at the same time. But on the flip side as well, we even had someone come in and within a week, we knew that they weren't the right person, and we dealt with that really swiftly, where came to a head. Even though there were other mounting priorities, we sort of said, no, we need to deal with this right now, and gave the person the opportunity. Hey, these are the challenges. This is what the team's sort of seeing. Do you see it this way? How do you want to react to this? Do you want to keep going? Do you want to try it? Or is it just not for you? That person actually gave them the opportunity, and they actually swore at me. So rather than emotionally react there, tried to keep my cool, go, okay, look, thank you for telling me how you feel. And then pulled in a couple of the key leaders within the team and said, hey guys, this is the situation. This is what I recommend that we do. And yeah, even though we'll lose a key person that's doing a key role here, I think the detriment to the team is a bigger problem here. And they went, yep, agree, totally. We told the person that this is going to be your last day, sort of, hand in your things, and apologies didn't work out, but I think this is the best for both of us. And I think we turned around a situation which could have been really dangerous if we let that go on, if we let that seep into the team and the team felt maybe resentment against Ben and I as leaders. We turned that into a positive where we said, hey guys, we have standards at the business. This person didn't meet the standards, nor did they hold the values that we want to instill in all of us. We understand that it's not going to be easy. We're going to have to replace that person. There's going to be a period of time where we don't have someone filling that role, but we wanted to support you as a team. And because that's not what we're about here. That's not who we want working for us. And they kind of a few nods around the room, a bit of a pump of the chest and go, we respect that. We think more of you. Well, maybe I read it incorrectly, but I think it was at that moment pretty tough because firing someone's never easy. Make sure that you do the right thing. There's people on the end of it as well. If you have to let someone go, they've obviously got a family and they need to support themselves. So those things creep into your mind. But at the end of the day, the culture, the DNA and the team was more important than anything. And we sort of said, we'll figure it out. And then it's all kind of worked out. But learning from those experiences and trying to turn them into positives where there's a challenge with a person, you have to work through it, sometimes really quickly, and maybe you have to make a decision quickly, whether it's the right or wrong one. But you try and, pros and cons, understand, what may happen from this. Yeah, there's going to be a bit of pain. How long is the pain going to be for? And can you overcome it? And I think if all the signs point to one direction, you've got to take that action. But I think the team, the culture, the brand and the business always come first beyond an individual. So I think that was a galvanizing moment that we felt for the team. And then the team just sort of gets stronger from there. And then you learn from that experience. Maybe that person that presented really well, there was maybe a few red flags that we overlooked because they were really strong in these areas, that their superpower was so powerful that maybe we could, look past a few of their shortcomings. And then the next time that you hire, you find, you take that sort of data on board to try and make the next best decision when it's in front of you.
Yeah, we've definitely done that before and made those mistakes, some key critical hires, and you put a bit of a paper towel over dog shit and you just sort of pretend that it's not there, and then eventually the paper towel, flies away and you
catching
go,
fire. Yes.
What's going on here? And yeah, it's tough. Your personality versus Ben's personality. Business partnerships are extremely tough. Now, I'm in a partnership with Jess, my wife. She's our head of operations. We have 180-degree opposite personalities. She's way more thought out, a lot more, I won't say pessimistic, but critical in the way she looks at things, and she can find challenges and obstacles, whereas I'm more the optimistic one that finds a way around everything and we'll just have a crack and go for it and we'll make it work. And I find it really challenging without her looking into things in detail. And I know it's tough for her sometimes without the optimism of like, let's just have a crack and this could go a 50-50 here, but let's have a crack and we'll make it work because of our personalities and our drive and our ambition. I want to know about you and Ben. How do you make that partnership work? Because most people can't make it work. Tell me about his personality and what he brings that you can't bring to the company or you don't bring to the company. And then how does he deal with your personality and how do you deal with his?
Yeah, look, as I said at the outset, I don't think we would have achieved anything close to what we would have achieved without being in this together. And I'm forever grateful for Ben. And I think having a co-founder there is super powerful. We are polar opposites, I would say. There's probably a little bit of overlap in the middle there about we both want the same thing in terms of the vision for the business, for the brand and where we want to go. And I think that's the important overlap. But I think if we were both the same, we probably wouldn't have been able to achieve. If we were both like me or maybe both like Ben, there would have been over-indexing in certain areas.
So what does Ben bring to the table? What's his asset that you see in him? And then what's his asset that he sees in you? And then how do you make those relationships work? Because that's what I'm...
Yes, I'd be interested to get his perception, but...
We'll get him on a different time.
Yeah, for sure.
He's a big dude as well. When you said that the guy swore at you, I was like, did he put him in the boot of the car and take him for a drive in the sun?
Yeah, look, I think I definitely wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm sort of passionate and driven, and Ben's, equally as driven, but I probably perceive him more as the cool, calm, collected and reserved guy in that he can sit on things and hold in his emotions a lot better than what I do. I've definitely learned from him in that sense that you don't need to always sort of react quickly. So I think he brings that. Definitely in the earlier days, his level of confidence and optimism of, we'll figure that out and we'll just do it. And a little bit of bravado in there. Yeah, we can make this work. No worries. I think that gave me a lot of confidence because sometimes I felt, maybe I did think, what could go wrong here? But having that person to balance that off is really powerful. And maybe sometimes I'm like, no, we can make this work. And he's like, I'm not really sure. So I think there's a blend, but I think where it overlaps is, as I said, our vision, where we want to take the brand, the business, and we try and spend as much time as we possibly can to make sure that we're aligned there because we both look at things differently. Of course, you have tension, and I say that happens rarely because we're quite aligned, but it's also understanding that tension is a good thing as well, in that if everything was just one way, maybe we're not making the right decision. Maybe we could be a little bit blind to things. So I've always tried to learn, continuing to learn, to be understanding of different worldviews and viewpoints and where Ben wants to go, because it's our business together at the end of the day. It's not my business or his business, and we've got to make the right thing for the business. And I think where we've done well together is put the business, the brand, the team first above our own personal egos. We try and have no egos. So I think we balance each other well. Interested to hear his perception of it, but even our Ben and I went to school together, school friends, and our friends always think it's fascinating how we ended up running a business together, because after school we took different paths and came back together to start this. But yeah, I think I learn a lot from Ben about myself as well. One particular example was, especially in COVID, when things were happening quickly, I was probably a bit more, oh shit. And Ben was cool, calm and collected and, stocked up on hand sanitizer and antibacterial and kind of calmed the team down a little bit while I was trying to figure out a plan. So I think we balanced each other in that example out really well, where Ben stood up, knew what to do, crisis management, and we were able to figure out a plan about how we move forward here. I think if it was up to me, I wouldn't have been able to necessarily step out there calmly and just reassure the team that everything's going to be okay. I would have wanted to maybe have the plan first. So I think being able to balance and lean into each other's skill sets there was a great example of how we've been able to work together. and we just continue to evolve together as well. We're definitely not the polished diamonds. We're still a bit rough, but I think, as I said, having the right vision and have a shared vision is super important to make sure that everything works and that you've got the right direction and it's not personal. We're both trying to get into the same spot.
How do you guys clarify that vision? So you sit down together and you go, right, I think that this is where we want to go. How do you have that conversation and what does that planning look like? And run me through like a 12-month planning and strategy session that you guys would do together as the company grows. And then the second thing I want to know is, how do you pivot? So Trump gets into office. He says we're going to put tariffs on anything that comes into the US. Now, I assume you guys do a fair bit of business in the US.
Yes.
Would that be correct?
Yeah, there's a bit of business in the US.
Yeah. And so how do you have that like, oh shit moment together where you realize like you may have to pivot really rapidly and quickly because you're going to take a massive hit?
Yes.
You know, almost in a week. How do you deal with that? So first of all, strategy for the year, run me through the game plan. How do you guys sit down together? How do you plan? How do you make sure that you're in alignment? And then the next thing is, how do you pivot from that alignment when that happens?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see one of my key roles is around the strategy and the planning. If I've learned anything through the process, is that the best laid strategy and plans can go out the window pretty quickly, as you've just mentioned. Mm-hmm. So we've got pretty open and honest dialogue. We don't have big corporate office. We don't have butcher paper all over the wall, and we're just spending days in the lab coming up with our strategy. It's an ever evolving strategy. We definitely have a lot of chats and discussions with each other, but I think having that vision of where we want to go, we've always had a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal about building the best brand and the best training community in the world. So I think having that as our North Star and as our massive goal is something that we always work towards. I think it's the open, honest dialogue that we constantly have to make sure that, this is where we're going. This is what it kind of looks like. Are you aligned with that? Do you maybe see things differently? Do you see this being higher than this? Do you see it maybe being a different direction? And, Ben and I work pretty well there. That's probably one thing that I spend a lot of time on, potentially too much time on the strategy and the planning, because it can move and shape pretty quickly. But I think the fast, decisive decision making off the back of that strategy and planning is really important. But always try to make sure that Ben and I are aligned in the direction, shared decision making as well. So we're not making things that we feel maybe to the detriment of the direction and where we want to go. So we know where we want to go. We largely know how we want to get there. And it sometimes is a bit of a maze to get there because things don't always work out perfectly. There's always things that change. As you mentioned, the tariffs, there's COVID tariffs, supply chain. Maybe a product that you get doesn't work as well. Maybe a product that you get works too well and you can't restock it. So there's always these challenges that have to shape and reshape what you're doing. But constant check-ins and communication, open dialogue if maybe something's not going as well as we'd like, or maybe something's going really well that we need to double down on.
Is that like a daily thing? Sorry to interrupt because I'm just trying to get it clear in my head. Is that like a daily?
It's pretty fluid. It's pretty fluid. We're, working with the team in the office. I'll probably come into the Ben's office and one tiny little bit of detail, he might think, oh, here we go again. But those sort of check-ins and touch points for me are really important because it's making sure that we're on the right path. We're on the path together, that we've got the shared vision. Are you on board with this? And if he's not, we'll hash it out. But
how do you hash that out? Because what I noticed before was when you were communicating about how you and Ben communicate, it seemed like you ask him a lot of questions when you're off track. So it seems like you have a really good skill at asking him questions to clarify.
Yeah.
Is that like something that you've learned, or is that just a skill that you have, or do you even know you have that skill? Or
honestly, I wouldn't know that it's one of my skills, but I appreciate you picking up on that. Again, his perception may be a little bit different, but I'm always learning on the fly as well. So I think by me asking maybe him questions, I learn about the right path through that. So if I'm asking him a question, sometimes it's a mirror to my thoughts and to challenge my thoughts. But as I said, it's a shared decision making. We want to be on the same path together. It's pretty fluid. It's a off the cuff. It's not a standing meeting. And I think that's when our best learning and action happens. It's not okay, we've got a 10 o'clock every Tuesday morning for strategy. It's not really how it happens. Maybe in big corporates it does, but for us it's pretty fluid. And that's okay because of things changing quite quickly. But we sort of had that from day one. The vision's there. It's the strategy and how we're going to get there, making sure that we've got a best laid plan and working that together, and then trying to involve the leaders and the managers and the team within that as we sort of layer down the business to make sure it's feasible. Some of the times the plans I have are unfeasible and maybe I'm off in dreamland. So it's that sense check as well is super important. And yeah, he'll call a spade, which is good and which is what I, respect as well. But pretty fluid. We normally see pretty eye to eye. He's normally willing to back me as well, which I appreciate. And I've got to learn to continue to back him as well, and support him in areas as well, which I might not have as much visibility or understanding of. So yeah, we try and mold as much as we can. It's definitely not a super structured process, which goes against my sort of training and thinking, but we've just had to learn to continue to adapt on the fly because that's business at the end of the day. You don't want to sort of die on a sinking ship because that was your strategy day one and that's where you were going to go. And you hit the iceberg and you just go down with it. We want to try and understand where we're going. And if there's something that we need to pivot, act on it, make a decision, get a feedback loop. Did that work? Yes, no. And that's sort of part of our DNA. And it's pretty quick moving.
When you said, I've got to learn maybe a little bit more of like how to, I can't remember the exact word you used, but it was like, you said Ben backs me quite well. And then you said, I have to learn how to back him a little bit more. Is that because he tends to be a bit more creative and a bit more free flowing the way he operates in business? And sometimes that can be a bit scary to a structured person. And what's the thought process behind that? And how do you learn how to trust each other? Because that's something that I guess even myself and Jess struggle with sometimes. I'm the highly adaptable, super courageous, massively creative. Like there's a million different ideas going in my head at the same time. I know that it's hard sometimes for Jess to back me because my plans aren't that well thought out. But then I know sometimes it's hard for me to back her sometimes because they're too thought out and I know how quick shit changes. And
yes,
if we're not adaptable and we're too rigid, everything falls apart. So how have you guys learned how to, I guess, trust each other in that process? And yeah, run me through that thought process.
Like with everything, and my answers to a lot of these questions are it's always a process, and it's always about learning about myself and other people. I think, as I said, I wear my heart on my sleeve. I like to, have a strategy and something thought out. But sometimes as well, when I maybe present a challenge to Ben, I may have been thinking about that for weeks, and I might present it to him and think that he can answer that quickly, whereas he hasn't had the benefit of that time. So I have to, give him the time and the space that I had to come up to the decision of where I was. So patience is important. We don't always have the virtue there, but that's super important. Understanding that my way isn't always the right way as well. We're always learning. So that's important. And while sometimes you can get really fixated on this big dream, this big vision and think you're going to take over the world, there's other things to consider as well. I was lucky enough to study the alt MBA. Always wanted to do an MBA. Didn't have the $200,000 to go and study it at Stanford. So I studied an intensive with Seth Godin, who's a fantastic marketer. And a lot of these things, which I didn't think was super valuable at the time, are quite valuable in carrying me through the business and management. And one of those was the worldview of others, how others think of problems and challenges, and it's not always the same as your own, and that's okay. And some of the best things you can do is just sort of time and space to make sure that you can arrive at the same decision, but understanding that they've got just as much opportunity to think about it as you, and as we're business partners, it is a partnership, and we both need to be on the same page. And sometimes that's not always aligned. Sometimes I've got to go with things, and he lets me run with a lot of things as well. So it's that appreciation. But I think it just comes back to we're in this together. We have a lot of respect for each other. We have to trust each other. That's sort of the bedrock. So I think all of those things are super important, and I'm always trying to learn and develop there about how other people approach things is not always the same way that I approach it, and that's totally fine. That's why it's good.
Awesome. How do you form your roles? So you both start the business as a partnership. Normally what happens is that both parties go, well, we're both partnerships, so therefore everything should be a 50-50 decision. But they're rarely a 50-50 decision because people bring different skill sets. So sometimes they should have more weight, and then sometimes others should have more weight. How did you guys figure out the roles in the company and what role each player plays in that?
Great question. I would say the answer to that was initially location. So when we started the business, I was actually in Melbourne, from Adelaide originally, living in Melbourne. Ben was in Adelaide. So we came together, I think one weekend to hatch the idea. And then we looked to launch it thereafter. But hopefully Ben won't mind me saying this, but Ben's bedroom was our first warehouse. So all of the stock that we bought got sent to Ben's house. He was living with housemates at the time. So naturally, Ben head of product and logistics. Did we sit down and say, okay, Ben, now this is going to be your remit, this is going to be my remit, and this is going to be how we come together and how we all structure it? It absolutely wasn't like that. I actually went to the US for a period of years as well. So again, I was removed from the warehouse operations and logistics. But as a result, I had to work on other things, identifying product, bringing it in, marketing, the team side of it as well. So we were lucky, is a blessing and a curse in a sense, that by virtue of location and the barriers there, we both had to adopt certain roles within the business, whether we sort of liked it or not. We definitely gravitated to certain things. I think Ben enjoys the operations and the making things work side. He's also got a great aptitude for product. I think he gets a real thrill out of product and bringing it to market and the new brand side as well. So Ben's taken a lot of oversight there. Naturally, whether I like it or not, I fall back into that finance and making sure that that's all dialed in. Obviously, we're both across the numbers and in conversations there, but fall back onto a bit of skill set because I was more international or away from the bedroom into the warehouse situation. Probably took more of an active role on the marketing side, and the roles sort of grew there accordingly. And I'd come back to Australia or Adelaide every year for 3 or 4 months, and we'd work on things quite intensely together, align, reset, and I'd sort of go off again. But being independent there, sort of that distance and location allowed us to make sure that our remits were different. And I think sometimes when maybe we came back, we felt like there was a bit of overlap there. And I think as founders and as partners, like you mentioned, it's like, okay, who's the boss, mum or dad here? Who's making the decisions? Ben would maybe say something different to me as well. So I think that location helped us establish the roles, the remit, and the lines of responsibility and accountability quite early, and help the team in a sense there, because quite often you can get, I'm sure you get different answers, whether they ask yourself or Jess as well.
Yep.
So it's important to be aligned there. So yeah, despite all my skills, experience, judgment, we didn't sit down and have a clear role description for each other, but the location definitely helped. And we naturally sort of lent into roles that we had an aptitude for and an interest in. And there's probably a grey area of things in the middle that maybe we don't like doing, but are a key part of business. So we just kind of roll our sleeves up and get into it there.
How do you deal with cash flow challenges or cash flow constraints? You've mentioned the vision before. How often does the vision drive decision-making versus the financial situation in the company? Because I know that a lot of business owners have that as well. They know where they want to go. I know we go through this as well, super clear with the vision, but then now all of a sudden there's a cash flow constraint and now we got to make decisions. Do we grow? Do we push? How do we finance it? What do we do? We don't have the cash in the bank account. Shit, what if we can't, we can get the finance, but what happens if we can't pay for it? How do you guys discuss those decisions, and how do you figure out whether it's the alarm bells that are going off right now in the business that are grabbing your attention, or whether do we make the decisions on the vision and what's best for the future growth of the company, but maybe we might not get there if we run out of cash?
Yeah, I mean, wow, what a question. It's the multi-million-dollar or billion-dollar question there. It's super tough. Talk about people and the challenges on that. People, team side, super important. Cash, equally, if not more important. Cash is the lifeblood of the business. And yeah, everything can look great on the P&L, but really cash is what drives it. Cash flow, super important. And without cash, you can't do anything. So it is a push and pull. It's an absolute tussle all the time. And I wish we had an endless bucket of money where it could be really vision focused. And you know what? It's okay because we'll just dip into this bucket and get some cash to be able to do that. That I find that probably the most challenging thing, because we have a vision of where we want to go, but the short-term things we have to do to make sure that we can still be on the path to achieve that vision sometimes don't align. So constant challenges. What would my recommendation be there? Of course, know your numbers, know your business. Cash flow is more important than the P&L. It's important to have a good P&L, profit and loss, but cash flow is super important. Setting up a 13-week cash flow and the right systems and processes to understand the flow, understand the inflow of money, the outflow of money, where your challenge points are. For us, a lot of those challenge points are inventory ramp up. Being an e-commerce business and a leader in e-commerce, we are subject to the buying and selling of inventory. That's how we tend to make our money. And it's not a flat line where inventory is always consistent. You have your peak trade periods, Black Friday, Boxing Day, where you have to maximize your stock before the sales come in. And that's really challenging. Quite often we find that they're the most challenging periods, is the time where we have inventory at the highest, where we're expecting the sales to come through thereafter. You've obviously got to get that right. And that's something that we constantly try and get better at. So that, yeah, cash flow, short-term versus long-term, super important. I think it's about making sure that the short-term is sort of looked after, and understanding that, is that such a detriment to what you're wanting to achieve in the long term? Because a lot of those short-term things don't help you get where you need to go in the future. For example, the brand building side is that the brand building does cost more money and time in the short term to be able to get to that long-term status. You're not going to have the long term if you can't build your brand there, but it also costs time, money, resources. So how do you do that? We'd love to be always focused on the brand, but at the end of the day, we've got team that we have to provide for. We've got product that we have to bring in and move through, and make sure all the commercials work. Because if we can't make that work, then we can't actually get close to our long term. So it is a push and pull. Sometimes you have to make concessions to make sure that you're still in the game to be able to achieve the long-term goals. And that's sort of why we show up every day, is to try and balance those things. Obviously, make sure that there's cash there, but then still keeping an eye on that long-term vision to make sure that you're doing the right things to be able to help achieve that.
That's a great answer, because I know that's, and I'm so glad you brought up brand building, because we work with quite a lot of trade-based businesses that are scaling, as we spoke about before the podcast. Something that I have a challenge with is a lot of tradie business owners are used to always getting cash for the work that they do immediately, and then they just reinvest back into making more money all the time. But then after a while, they can't get good staff, they can't hire people, and they say everyone just comes in and works for the money. But the thing is that they don't have a brand, or they don't have any sort of emotional association with the marketplace. And so if they want to hire staff, you're just going to go work at this business that's null and void of any culture or any brand or anything like that. But a lot of them don't see the value of actually putting time and effort into brand. They just think that, well, we're good at electrical or we're good at plumbing, people should just use our services.
Of course.
So I'm so glad you mentioned that is almost an investment in the future, that you do pay quite a lot out up front, but the ROI over a period of time, I guess comes back.
Yeah, look, it can feel like a bit of a cross the fingers and hope it kind of pulls through. I think it's just about allocating a portion of time to that and coming up with some opportunities that you can do to make sure that that's still part of your consciousness and your effort. Because, I probably was guilty early days of, of course people are going to come in and just work for our business and see the same vision as Ben and I and just live and die by the brand. But that's not the case. We have to share more about our brand, our business, the team, where we're going, spotlight the community as much as we can as well, because that's what people to connect to at the end of the day. Yeah, the pay packet is one thing. Feel like that's a given, but people want to feel a part of something, not only your team, but then who you're providing the services for. I'm sure in trade-based businesses as well, the word of mouth is really important. So you want to make sure that they have a good experience, and that experience is part of the brand as well. It's not just the name on the top of the invoice. It's the experience, it's the people, and that's that story, that connection. Yeah, you might see it as just a service, but that's solving a problem that someone may have had. That's helping someone. There's a person at the end of the transaction. So I think that is an opportunity for trade-based businesses to share stories of their customers, their clients, and have your brand as sort of the guide and the helper there, and make your customers and clients the hero of that story, and you're just facilitating that. And sometimes you can over-index on that, and you might not see the immediate ROI, but I think it's allocating enough of a time to do something that's impactful. If you can't do 101 things, I always want to do 101 things, and I probably got to slow it down a little bit and go, okay, if we want to achieve 4 key things over the course of the year, that we can do 1 each quarter, that we look back at the end of the year and go, you know what? We did X, Y, and Z. That's awesome. That's great. Let's build on that the next year. So I think, the brand building always has a place. And I think now more than ever, does that have the role of importance, because people like dealing with people. People connect emotionally with brands, and that's why they buy. That's why they contract someone or get services from someone, is because there's that connection there. Yeah, there's a means to an end, but I'm guessing that's probably down the bottom end of the market as well. And it's quite transactional. And where people can build real lasting things is by doing an element of that brand. But completely get you don't want to over-index on that. We've done that before where let's just build brand, and then people will just be lining up for all this product. We found that there's a balance, and it's not always 80-20 or 20-80. It can sort of have ebbs and flows there. So it's important, and it's not just your brand, but it's you in yourself, telling your story. I love opportunities like this to share, so people can learn a bit about me and the journey that we're on, and that we're not just behind a computer. So I think it's important, and something that you do need to invest in, because it will pay dividends for you over the period of time. An example is where we do this and we don't think much is going to come from it. And then you meet someone randomly and they go, you know what? I heard you on that podcast. I saw you do this. I learned about how you started the business. And you go, wow, that's actually really cool, because if we didn't do that, no one would know. No one would know. So it is important, and it does actually go a lot further than what you maybe think as a business owner.
How do you make decisions on brand equity? So, I mean, I've known about your brand, which originally was the Wildlife. I find it interesting how a business owner puts value into how do you sponsor something, and then how do you measure an ROI on it, especially coming from a finance background as well. Like, trying to figure out what the actual brand value is so hard from what I've seen.
Absolutely.
So how do you figure out who do you partner with? Who are the people that you want to bring in as brand ambassadors? How do you put money into, things like sponsorships or some sort of marketing that's going to go out to a mass audience where you're just sort of throwing shit out there to see what sort of sticks and what doesn't? How do you figure all that out? And how have you figured this stuff out on the journey, especially coming from a finance background?
Well, caveat, I definitely haven't figured it out.
Okay.
There's no, and that's probably how I thought about it originally, is that everything needs to have a number attached to it. And I think that's how I was thinking about it, maybe incorrectly, in that it's probably there's a funnel there, and it's important to do things in every touch point in the funnel. And some things may not have a short-term ROI, but they are important. And I think having the bedrock of your mission, vision, and values as a brand and as a business, and having that lens. So any brand building initiatives that we do they align on the mission, vision, and values? Do they align with TWL? Do they align with pushing the boundaries? Do they align with the strength and community, which is one of our key values? If they don't align, that's an easy no. If they do align, okay, well, yeah, there's a weighing up of what's the level of investment, how much time, effort, energy, resourcing are we going to put into this, and how do we see sort of making that sweat? Sometimes there's things that won't sweat, but how do we, amplify those things that we do to get the best value out of it? So that isn't a return metric for us. We definitely know we get it. There's probably it's more of a qualitative rather than a quantitative answer there, and understanding that these things go a long way to helping us in the long term. And we don't see the equity there, but there's one, we're not sinking the business by, a briefcase over the table, an initiative that doesn't align with where we want to go. It's about being mindful of that, understanding how much you can afford to commit to that and what outcomes you want to get from that. And sometimes there aren't any tangible outcomes, and that's okay. But understanding that it all goes to part of the story and what you're trying to build, and making sure that you can amplify and elevate that as part of your story, because getting back to the brand building, that's what people buy into. That's what they get behind. For us, it's a TWL logo, but people buy something because they feel something, and it does that help contribute. On the flip side, we definitely try and go, look, if we allocate X dollars to this, do we see an uplift on this channel? You see a bit of that. We go to an event. We've got a huge event coming up called the Torium Pro, which is a big one on our calendar. It's a big investment for us. Do we always see the ROI? Yes, no. But what we do see after is the brand affinity, the power of speaking to people offline, the building of the community, and then the flow-on effect. We might call it a halo effect from some of these efforts, where you see a bit of a uplift or a bit of a vibe check in terms of, the momentum around this is really powerful. So how can we do that in a way that's not going to sink the business, but is meaningful? And that's it's a feel and see thing as it's much as I'm not much of a vibe operator, but there's times to lean into that, but it's still understanding that, okay, is this what metrics in the business is this going to have an impact on? And how do we make sure that we amplify that in a way that we can get the most out of this? I think that's important. And then it gives, myself, the brand, and other businesses out there the perspective that, we can get a return on this. Because at the end of the day, returns and profits aren't a bad thing. You need those to reinvest into the business to grow and to elevate and to create opportunities for your team and community. So, I think everything does need to come with a level of return. It's just that return might not come tomorrow. And I've sort of had to learn to be okay with that, knowing that, a few of these key things will see a bit of an uplift over time.
When things go off track, how do you manage that with your own time management? So I'm really keen to understand, especially with a lot of business owners that have done well and probably pushed out into the top 10 to 5% in business just in general, especially in Australia. How do you manage your time on an average week, and then the shit hits the fan, or the chaos comes up, or the little niggles and irritations and frustrations that happen every day in a business? How do you manage those with your time management, and how do you deal with it mentally and emotionally?
Yeah, again, hard-hitting questions, no perfect answer. I definitely don't have it all figured out, but I probably learn. I maybe look at time as a different construct. So stick with me here. I look at time less about time, but more about energy. It's more about what gives me energy and what takes away my energy, and managing my energy levels as opposed to time. Now, I'm definitely not too far out there, but I think that's an important concept to overlay on your calendar and craft your week in a way that you're not killing all of your energy and you can't do the most important things. So I try to construct my week in a way where I know where, there's a time allocated and this is what I've got to do with who I've got to do it. And this is what we've got to achieve from that time. But then what I've also learned is that while you might not be in a meeting making a decision, you also need to create space in your calendar, in your week, that gives you the capacity to think. Because I think what my key role is that I need to do a lot of thinking and strategizing and planning and bring that back into the team rather than the execution side. I do have to do still a lot of execution because we're a small dynamic team, but it's understanding the ebbs and flows there. I think we talked about this, off mic, but if you're feeling good and things are flowing, keep leaning into that. Sometimes I'll be a little bit guilty of working late at night because I'm in something, I'm in a flow, and then I look at my watch and go, yeah, okay, it's probably a little bit late. I definitely did that on the early days, work super late and then sort of up early the next day, or maybe I work super late and then have a little bit of a sleep in to try and recharge the batteries there a bit. But so I think about it around managing energy. Of course, there's going to be non-negotiables that need to go into your calendar and prioritized. I think the time blocking element is important too, thinking about the key things that you want to achieve and then carving out time, because absolutely I can wake up every day and I despite everyone's best morning routine, I don't have don't see sunlight and go for a morning ice bath and, don't look at my phone until midday. I wake up, look at my phone and whatever's in there can dictate my day. Yeah. And sometimes it does, and that's okay. But I think understanding the clear priorities of what's going to move things forward, giving yourself enough time to be able to achieve those, understand when you're feeling good and in a flow state, you can do more. And then when maybe you're feeling less energized, maybe doing something to restore your energy, going for a walk or, going out for a coffee, going for a run, that does restore some batteries and then you can get back into it. So I'm lucky enough to still have a lot that I need to do, but be in charge of that calendar in a sense. There's, of course, as I said, non-negotiables, but managing not only your time, but your energy, prioritizing. I can always get better at prioritizing. I'm guilty of, I still carry a moleskin notebook with me everywhere. I'm still a bit old school, like to write things down. At the end of each week, I do brain dumps as well to get it out of my head onto a piece of paper in different quadrants. And then I try and organize what's the most important thing here that I need to tackle, maybe going to the next day or the next week, so that I'm quite clear on that. But also understand that as a business owner and a leader, there's going to be times where you have to drop things and attend to a fire or an issue or a challenge in front of you. And it's understanding that happens. That's just part of it. And don't throw everything off course because that's what you had to do. Deal with that as best you can. Try not to let it derail you, but then understand that when you're back into it, pick it up and run with it from there. So it is quite fluid, but it tends to work for me.
Do you consistently feel like you're not doing enough?
Always.
And then how do you deal with that? And how do you, like you said, managing your energy is important, which I talk a lot about, that you can't really manage time. You can only manage the things you do within the time that's available. So I talk more about action management than time management. But I know that that's a challenge that I have and a lot of other highly driven, highly ambitious people have, is that guilt of like, I've got so much work to do. I know I'm getting burnt out. I know I'm tired. I know I probably should go for a walk. I might go for a run, or I could finish early tonight, but then sitting on the couch and, you're sitting there watching a bit of TV and your brain's already cooked, but it's thinking, shit, I got all this stuff to do.
Yes.
How did you deal with that? And how did you work through it up to this point to where you're at now? And have you noticed that as you get older and as you're wiser in business, that's reduced, or is it that guilt and the pressure the same as what it was back in the early days?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I'm a high performer. I hold myself to a high standard and I want to achieve, big things. And I definitely don't sleep on that. Sometimes that's a blessing and a curse. I'm sure you probably feel that way as well. Definitely early days, I just could never do enough. I just couldn't do enough. And always at the brink of burnout, where like migraines, where you just physically can't actually look at a computer. You just can't, because you've gone past that point of exhaustion. And I think it's learning those signs in a sense where you know where you are and how you're feeling. And that doesn't help anyone if you reach that point. Definitely early days, I was just all gas, no brakes. And we've got to achieve all of this. Over the journey, tried to get a little bit better at that. As I say, try it and craft in time that helps me restore my batteries as well. One of my bosses at the bank saw that mindset and just success-driven performance mindset, and he gave me a book. The book was called A Corporate Athlete, which, what are you trying to tell me here? But sort of my love for sport and performance and reaching goals. But there's seasons that you go through as well. There's an off season where you're sort of preparing, you're training, you're planning. And then there's an in season where you're sort of playing the game and you're executing, you're still finding time to recover. And then there's sort of final season or playoff where this is game time. This is, most important time for the business, where you have to be on, you have to be high performing. And yeah, maybe your recovery might take a bit of a hit, but you've got to be on it. And I thought it was interesting, and that stuck with me this whole time, where you're going to have times where you're super energized and you can get after it. It's just, and you're going to have times where you're exhausted and have hit the wall. And I've definitely had times where I'm really, really high by maybe successes or things that have gone well. And I've definitely had times which are really, really low, where something hasn't worked out or I feel like it's a failure. What I've tried to adopt is a pretty calm, like not too high, not too low. Don't get overexcited or don't get too upset. Try and keep a bit of an even keel in every scenario. And then overlaying that kind of corporate athlete mindset is that you're going to go through seasons. There's going to be seasons where, as I said, all gas, no brakes. It's playoff time. Game 7, you've got to hit the winning shot. But after that, there's going to be a little bit of off season where you can actually take some time off, recharge, recuperate. And as business owners, I don't think we allow ourselves to think that way enough. I've tried to tell myself, and definitely my beautiful fiancée Natalie will keep me in balance there, about, every now and then you need to be okay with not doing anything. And I always find if you're on holiday or you've taken a few days off, that's when the creativity starts to come back. And sometimes I find holidays challenging because I can't even walk into a cafe overseas and not reconstruct the menu and understand how much it's costing them and how much they're making. But I think that's all sort of part of it. So understanding there's going to be ebbs and flows, managing that. Reaching burnout isn't going to help anyone. So making sure that you sort of stop just before that point. Understand that there's going to be times where it's going to hurt and you need to dig deep, but then also trying to schedule other times where you can balance that out, recharge, and be the best version of yourself, for your brand, business, team, because you're not really going to help anyone if you can't be at your best.
That's amazing. What drives you now?
I think it's twofold. I've always had innate internal drive at everything I do. Always sort of super competitive. But what really drives me is, our vision to create the best training brand in the world and to create the best training community in the world. And that's really what drives me. At the end of the day, we put all of this work in to, encourage and motivate the community that surrounds TWO as a brand to, push their boundaries and to achieve what they want to achieve their dreams. And I think that's something that's bigger than me and bigger than my own internal drive to do well and to succeed. That gives me great perspective and drive in that there's something out there that's bigger than me, something that not only I, but the team are all contributing to. And there's people out there at the end of what we're doing that we're helping motivate, inspire, empower them sort of as the coach on their journey, cheering them along, giving them the help and motivation they need. And then obviously the products to give them a bit of inspiration there. And I think that's really what drives me. Yeah, we're TWL is an online e-commerce business, but it's the offline that really excites me. It's going to events, working with athletes. It's going to a run club. It's having a training club where you're seeing people that are part of your community, repping your brand, having a smile on their face and chasing down and achieving their dreams and goals. I think that's, far cooler than the internal success that I might have as a validation point. So having something that's external to me that we're all working towards is really what drives me. And I don't think will ever be done. I think you climb the mountain, you get to the top of the mountain, and then you see another mountain as you look up. So trying to enjoy that process as well is really important. But we're working for the community at the end of the day, and that's something that we have to keep leveling up and delivering on.
Awesome. Just before we wrap up, what do you think has been the biggest personal learning that you've had being a business operator or a business owner?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you're capable of more than what you think you are. In that, quite often we put ceilings on ourselves of what we think we could achieve. So I think it's important to give yourself perspective there. Sometimes stop and smell the roses of look how far I've come. And I've always been guilty of that, sort of performance driven and wanting to achieve the next thing. But in looking back on that, you go, wow, like look how far I've actually come and have still got to go. But it's, I think, trying to instill that inner belief in yourself and the confidence in that you have to sort of push the boundaries and get outside of your comfort zone to know what you're really capable of. And that's something that I try and take, personally, professionally, and into life. And other people that I speak with, I try and give them the confidence that, what's holding you back? You can actually do this. You can achieve this if you apply yourself. And I think that's pretty powerful for me because like everyone, doubt creeps in, uncertainty. But at the end of the day, you're capable of more than what you know.
Awesome. And then the final question that I have for you, and this one might be a little bit deeper, but what's the question that you've had on your mind currently that you're trying to figure out about life?
Yeah, I guess I'm always trying to figure it out. I mean, what's the purpose? What's this all about? And I keep reflecting on it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Sounds a bit cheesy, but even recently training for a marathon and running a marathon, is it about the marathon? And I draw a lot of parallels between training for a marathon and business in that, is it about getting to the finish line or is it about the journey and the roller coaster that you go on and the training, the planning, the preparation, the putting in the work? I think that's far bigger than finishing the end of the race. Because quite often after the race, you maybe feel a little bit down and you go, well, what's next? What am I going to go on to next? So I think for me, it's about the journey. What is the journey? What am I on? Where am I going? But trying to enjoy that along the way. Because I think if I'm always looking for what's that final destination, I don't think I'll ever reach that. So I'm trying to constantly tell myself that it's about the journey, not the destination. And I'm always trying to figure that out. What journey am I on? How can I challenge myself again? How can I get better? How can I run a better business? How can I empower the team more? How can I deliver on better product? How can we just do things better? I'm always wanting to do better. And that's a performance mindset. But along that path, I want to also recognize how far we've actually come.
Awesome. Andy, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And there was a lot of light bulb moments for me just in this conversation. So thank you.
Thanks, Michael. It's been awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. Most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them.